Channel, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me every week to get tips on how to become good communicators as healthcare professionals whose English is their second language. My name is Shweta. I'm the founder of Healthcare Dynamics, and this is what I do. I coach healthcare professionals from English as a second language backgrounds become better communicators to ultimately connect and collaborate better with their patients, receive glowing testimonials and reviews from them, and build authority, trust, influence, and impact. So as part of my monthly interview series, I have a lovely guest that has worked in the ESL space for a very long time, just like me. So even though she's not in healthcare, she will give a perspective on what it's like in the ESL industry in general nowadays and where do better. So Christina, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Shweta. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
No problem. So would you mind introducing yourself and just your journey as an ESL teacher and coach and tutor, and how you got started in this journey?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. Well, basically, I'm here. I'm based in Auckland. I've been living in Auckland, New Zealand, for about 19 years now. My husband is from here. However, I'm originally from the States, and my children are my family. I have four children, and they were born in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only 19 years ago that we thought, right, we're going to make New Zealand our home. So here we have been since ever since then. And I have my bachelor's degrees in international relations when I completed that back in the 80s and had traveled and lived in London for a year, but then I also lived as an exchange student for a year in Austria when I was 18. So between high school and university, I took that year to learn German and live with a family. And I think that was definitely, yeah, needless to say, a bit life-changing, and which at that point, that's what led me to do international relations degree. And I've always been involved with homestays and hosting students and with my family and back when I was growing up. So it was always part of my world. And I thank my mother for that because, well, she is actually born Hungarian and
Mm-hmm.
she immigrated to America when she was 19. So yeah, so it's obviously you could say it's a bit of my family ancestry. And growing up, I could never speak with my grandparents, so that's what was kind of the goal of learning that language when I was later, a young adult. But since coming to New Zealand, I was raising my children, and then I went back into getting certified in SELTA to teach English as a second language. So I've been involved with the school system here in New Zealand for about 10 years now, and I've worked in international departments. I've worked in the ESL English departments in the high school, and then after COVID, I thought, right, I wanted to get back into teaching at the language centers once our borders opened up. And since then, I've started my own tutoring company, which is the Talk Time Tutoring, and that way I can kind of really cater and tailor to a lot of my students, adult students that are really wanting specific needs in their language journey. So yeah, so
Very fascinating journey, and I think we both have a lot of similarities in the way that we are fascinated by culture and different languages, and traveling and the education that and the experience that provides. So yeah, really good sort of common ground there.
exactly, yes, yeah, it all sort of interconnects, really, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So which countries have you taught English as a second language in, and what sort of students have you catered to?
Well, so I've only taught in New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
but I've taught a wide range from, 5-year-olds to 85-year-olds, basically.
Wow.
I've had, so I've worked with the primary to the university students, or I should say more like the high school students at during COVID time when I was online and helping the teachers with the English as a second language students. And then after the borders open up, and yeah, I've been a relief teacher in various language centers. Most of them have been, for the young adults. So in the CBD, there were a lot of the 20 to 30-year-olds that are obviously here specifically just to learn for their careers and when they go back to their home countries. Now, however, I live on the shore in the suburbs of Auckland, and that's where I've been, for 19 years. And that was why I started talk time tutoring, because I just saw there's so many mothers and fathers particularly that I teach I've taught their children, and yet their English was very low for being here 5, 10, 20 years, and they hadn't really picked up the language as far as what I thought would be like Kiwi language and
Hmm.
everyday language, and they really felt not very confident, and
Mm.
even some of them that what I would have considered were very fluent, they still didn't feel confident because they didn't feel like they fit in like a native speaker. And that's when I thought, well, right, I can cater to that and make it what they need, whether it's for their own careers. Some of the parents are going back to work or trying to pass their IELTS test or what have you. And some, whether they're in, healthcare, whether they're in hospitality, business, they all need specific language for their, particular area of expertise. And they just haven't had the time to really progress in that really, mainly because, yeah, they have families, or if not families and they're single, they're working full time and they just haven't had time to develop that language at a level that would be considered where they consider it more natural, and yeah, like a New Zealander, I suppose, or a
Yeah.
native speaker.
You actually brought up a very interesting point, this concept of being a native English speaker. Now,
Mm.
if you have watched any of my YouTube videos, I'm not sure if you have,
Yes, yes,
I have a little bit of a problem with this native English speaker. And it's not for the reasons that you think it is.
yeah,
I think what happens, and I just want to get your perspective on it as well.
yeah.
A lot of students or English second language speakers, that's that becomes like a benchmark of success for them. They're like, I want to be able to speak like a native English speaker. And whilst fundamentally that's really not problematic, the issue is that it puts too much pressure on themselves, and their already eroded confidence gets worse because it seems like a little bit of a high standard for them. And I think in terms of being a native speaker, the emphasis has always been on grammar, vocabulary, and all these semantics, which, any non-native speaker is very good at that, whereas you and I,
Mm.
it happens to us very naturally. So they can sort of tell us chapter and verse what the
Yes,
grammar rules are and all that, and
totally,
we
yeah.
completely struggle with that. And the issue that I also have is that um, when it comes to really speaking their mind, expressing themselves authentically, uh, having an opinion, uh, you know, connecting with other people, it just feels for them not only performative but also very stressful. So I just
Mm.
wanted to get your thoughts on this whole speaking like a native English. So this is my opinion on it, but I just want to get your thoughts on is is that a success benchmark to aspire to, or you think that is it needs to be changed in any way?
Oh, I absolutely agree what your perspective is, because I think that is that they do put a lot of pressure on themselves, and like I said, um I can speak with someone or help someone that I find is so fluent, and it's like they still give themselves a hard time for not their English isn't good enough, and it's sort of like, really, like, wow, I don't know where that pressure for themselves have came about. And funny enough, I just wrote, because I write an article every month in my local, it's the suburb I live in, and they have
Mm-hmm.
a monthly magazine that comes out, and I write in there every month. And
Mm-hmm.
this particular month, or for October, was on that very thing about pronunciation and things like that. That don't strive for perfection,
Yeah.
just speak. And the reason why I wrote this article is because right now in New Zealand we have it's been National Maori Language Week.
Okay.
So, and I cannot roll my R's for anything. Like, and I kind of gave that as, there's only certain percentage of our population that can roll the R's. And
Okay.
for certain languages like Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Maori, you need to to sound correct and like a
Mm-hmm.
native, you
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to roll your R's. Well, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, and that's okay. I'm gonna still attempt to say
Mm-hmm.
the odd Maori word, and one day I definitely want to learn Spanish, and I'm not gonna be able to roll my R's and sound like a native person. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all about at least just trying and giving the pronunciation to the best you can. And we all have accents, we all have different ways of speaking, and yeah, and yes, you can improve if you want to sound like a little bit more clearer. But for the most part, I always think, don't worry about perfection. Just do it just to talk and gain that confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I've been following a this amazing fitness trainer these days. It's something that just a little bit off track. It's become a big priority of mine this year to do strength training because I'm heading into perimenopause.
Yes.
And I've been following this fitness trainer, and his motto has always been, "Be consistently average."
Yeah.
And essentially it means progress over perfection, and
Yes.
it's a mantra that I absolutely and really put into practice. And I think that's really what we should be encouraging English as a second language students to actually do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
and interestingly, a few weeks ago, one of my followers reached out to me, and they started, and I said to them, guys, this is what I do. And even though she is not really a healthcare worker as such, she's more into research, and she wanted to look at some options on doing post graduation, so postdoc, PhD over here in Australia. She's from Iran. And I was like, okay, well, let's jump on a call and I'll see how I can support you. She hesitated all the time. And, I remember sending my calendar link to her multiple times. And she
Mm.
hesitated every single time to accept it. I had to follow up with her so many times. And I'm like,
Hmm.
well, what's going on? She's like, oh, my English is just not good. They're going to judge me. And even though I had to really reassure her so many times that, I've worked with you guys for a living. So I'll be the last
Yeah.
person to judge you. But
Right.
but but she was so 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 conscious. So we had
Mm.
our conversation just in text. Um, but a bit, it is really sad, and I think also their culture may really play a part in them not being wanting to participate and really practice. Because
Yes.
there is obviously that stigma of them losing face, as they like to put it.
Yes.
Um, so, just from your experience as an ASL teacher, how do you encourage your students to get out of their comfort zone, give things a go, and, like I said, be consistently average, and be encouraging, empowering, and still hold?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I like that a lot. Be consistently average, because then it doesn't set that benchmark so high that it's like it's okay to be average. But yeah, I think with, and I think it's interesting because I do, depending on certain cultures, some of them do obviously, and I'm going to say like a lot of the Asian cultures, they do put a lot more pressure on themselves to be
Mm-hmm.
in, and they know the grammar rules so well, they
Yes,
do.
yes,
And I had like South American learners, and they are just by nature, they're just friendly and
yes,
vibrant, and
mm-hmm.
they just love to talk and
Yes.
party and eat and drink. They
They're
just
my kind of people.
so they love to talk. So they don't care what people think.
Mm,
So their language conversational is really amazing, like
mm,
some of them because they have that confidence. So what I say is like, and I kind of do take things as a what the pathway is like you have confidence, and that's something that I'll touch on, like how do you get confidence? Because once you kind of get a little bit more confident, then you can have that conversations with people that you don't feel so you feel more uninhibited to go ahead and just give it a go.
mm,
And then you start making connections with people, and whether they're native speakers or non-native, you learn from each other, and you make those connections. And then lo and behold, you fit into your community, you feel like you belong, and you don't care about not, that you're not perfect. Of course it's not, but at least you feel like, oh, actually there are other people in the same situation as me. And you know what? And usually a native speaker, I've often told my students, if you really want to know how, if you said something correctly or you want to be, know how to say something, I go, you need to ask a native speaker. Just come out and say, can you please tell me, did I say that correctly? Or can you help me say that and pronounce that? I go, no one's going to tell you correctly because it would be rude. They would think that they don't want you to feel bad. No one wants you
Mm,
to feel bad. But if you want to learn from someone and say, oh, and people are so happy to help.
sure.
Um, but then I also tell them, you cannot rely on your phone so much. Like, yes, we have in our day and age, everything is Google Translate. You have everything right there. But actually, there's a lot to be said about the good old-fashioned pen and paper. And I said,
Absolutely.
and I always tell them because I do a lot with neuroscience and like I also have done a course in neuro as a neuro change practitioner during COVID, and I did
Mm-hmm.
get certified in that. And I try to bring a lot of that holistic way of learning, and for me as teaching, to how we make those connections and wire the brain. And I just said,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your brain has to make that connection on pen and paper for you to have
Yes.
the memory, the recall. And I think because of our phones become such a great tool, but also a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use it and depend on it like mostly all the time, then that's
Mm-hmm.
why. That's why you're not going to progress. But if you have a pen and paper, you write down phrases, you write down vocabulary words, you make the connections and how did they pronounce that? And then then that's when you make those connections as we used to do in the good old days. But
100%. Yeah. Uh,
yeah, and or listening to YouTube videos or podcasts like something like this, and movies, and just said 2 hour movies too much. I agree for
mm,
learning it, but pick 15 minutes
mm,
and really put the subtitles on in English,
mm-hmm.
and take, oh, what did they say? How did they say it? Write it down. Yeah, what's the meaning of that? Yeah, so that's kind
Mm,
of little things that I always
yes.
suggest.
Yeah, all of those are really, really good suggestions,
Mm.
100%. I remember when I was traveling around Vietnam, it's about a decade ago now, and there's a central spot in Hanoi. I forgot what it's called. It's like where how you have this big fountain. It's like a lovely park. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
And over there, it's very common for when they see someone who looks different to them, they assume that they speak English. So
yeah.
it was very, I got stopped in that particular spot so many times because
Oh, yeah,
people just wanted to speak in English. And I found that just amazing.
yeah.
And I didn't put my teacher hat on and start to give them feedback, but I was just happy to play along and yeah, just happy to play along and, give them that opportunity to practice. So
Yeah, yeah.
that was a really interesting experience. Now let's
Mm,
talk about technology because you have brought it up now. So,
yeah.
in what ways do you think technology and AI, in particular now, are going to transform the space of English as a second language speaking and communication, just from your experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of them have asked me too, and students, and it's like, I think with certain, if they have a really important documents to fill out, or an important, they feel like they want to, well, like I'm going to use an example, like a parent who has to write an email back to their child's teacher, and you're worried about how it might sound. I said, depending on the importance of that email, I go, if it's not crucial or you want it needs to be very formal and professional, it's okay if you just use your own language as practice. And yes, you can, maybe maybe not so much AI. I think it's Grammarly would be, I would say, because what happens with AI is, we know when you're a native speaker and we use it to help us, I would typically then I try, I'm going to still change it to make it sound like me. We have the language, we can make it definitely sound more genuine. And when you're not when you're not a native speaker, you got to be careful, because when it does sound just too robotic or like AI,
Mm,
personally, I would rather it sound like less, if it's an informal situation, I'd rather
mm-hmm,
sound that they are more authentic and just give it a go and just do it because that's okay. Again, we go back to that whole perfection versus just giving it a try and being average. It's okay. But I understand it depends on the importance of that email, let's say, or texting. It doesn't matter. Just go ahead and do it. It's okay if it's broken English. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's again, it depends. It's all about I always tell my learners too, like when going back to AI, like or writing anything formal versus informal. They're like, how do we know when to use informal or formal? And I said, it's always about the situation, the
Mm-hmm.
person, and who you're writing it to, where, and what the details are. But it's about the situation, and I think that's kind of a really good guideline when I said, formal versus informal AI or authentic writing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
And so when you are working with your students, how do you leverage technology and AI? And how do you ensure that there is that human element and connection and support that you offer to your students?
Well, yeah, and it's probably, I haven't really had to cross that bridge as much as probably if I was still teaching in the city with,
Mm-hmm.
the language centers with a lot of the young adults that are right into, and, they have to go back to their home country to get into the workforce, and what do they do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like for me, my the learners that I have and being more parents and at home, a lot of them are pretty, they don't even go on like social media really other than their own language.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been actually just for me to even just promote them to try to go onto Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, whatever they
Mm-hmm.
have, so that they can kind of get a feel for people like writing different posts. And yes, we are using AI to help us, navigate in times, and there's a lot of information out there is wonderful. When they use it themselves, I don't think a lot of my learners, they're really not. I haven't come across it as much yet,
Mm-hmm.
because again, a lot of them haven't been in the workforce. So I think it will be very interesting when I start, if I, work, ideally I want to go into, some companies and work with some of the fluent English speakers, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not their native language. And I think that's when I feel like we'll find out, okay, how do we, learn and deal with this? And, it is that authenticity that we need to keep yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, a big challenge for anybody at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, just in terms of, I think how the ESL industry in general has changed, and what are some challenges that you see these days? And let's put the technology bit aside because we've already sort of covered.
Yeah,
But in
yeah.
general, what are some areas in which you reckon that there needs to be a radical change?
Um, I think it probably kind of got, to tell you the truth, I don't know if I should say it or not, but I will. It's like
Sure, of course, yeah.
with the government, I think there needs to be, because I'm finding, like some of the language centers I've worked for, a lot of the people, depending on their visa situation. I don't know enough about that end of it at all, but what I do
Mm-hmm.
know is that most of them get free language, English lessons.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not saying just when they first arrive, I'm talking about 10, 15, 20 years later.
Mm,
Some
mm,
students have been here and now they're grandparents and they still get free language, and
mm-hmm.
they don't have that commitment as much because it is free.
It's
Whereas
free, yeah.
if
Mm-hmm.
they have like a strict regulation about, yes, you've come into the country, but and you get free lessons, for your first, I don't know, year or 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have to feel a little bit more pressure to acclimate.
Mm-hmm.
What I find is that they have this, I don't know how it works and how open it is that they have like these free lessons, and then what happens is then they, a lot of might go to a restaurant and shopping within where they know they're going to be speaking their language,
Mm-hmm.
versus someone who, let's say, I don't know if someone I want to say like, oh, Russian, like a Russian student I have. No one's going to
Yeah,
speak Russian to them to go grocery shopping, right?
exactly.
Whereas
Yes.
obviously Australia would be a lot like New Zealand, where a lot of there are a lot more restaurants, and whether they're Asian speaking or Korean and
Mm,
Japanese, may perhaps a little bit, but Chinese. They a lot of my learners are from those countries, so I always say get out there and try something that's really new and not put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit each day. Little steps, it doesn't have to be major, but little steps. And it comes back to them. But, initially, I do think our government needs to be a little bit clearer guidelines as to what's being offered for them, with services. Yeah. Mm.
hmm Okay. Yeah, those are all again really good points and insights that
Mm.
you have brought up. Now, one of the things that the thing that I really focused on is even though I work with healthcare professionals, and I think
Mm.
that's where the confusion happens when someone looks at me on LinkedIn or views what I do. They all think that I do exactly what you do, which is help them with their language.
Yeah.
Whereas I take it a step further and I deal with the nuances of communication. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to get your perspective on what you think are the points of intersection between language and communication. What are some differences, and how do you integrate that when you are both these elements when you're working with your students?
Well, I would say like with the language and communication as far as them, and when I'm just taking for a classroom setting, I've
Yeah.
what I find is what has been the most helpful is actually like everyday language and conversation skills. And
Mm-hmm.
that I think and again, I'm being very specific to the current students I have, because a lot of them have been here for a number of years, and they are immigrants, they are expats, they are living in New Zealand
Mm-hmm.
indefinitely. They're not here just on a, 6-month student visa like where I used to teach. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a very different pathway, I would say, of what one needs to learn and know. So the ones that I teach now, they're being an expat or an immigrant here, they really do need to fit into the culture here a bit
Mm-hmm.
more, and through that it would be through the language. And again, I'd go back to no, they don't have to sound like a Kiwi. They don't have to sound like a native. I don't sound
Mm,
like a Kiwi, but but it's okay to start using certain words that,
sure.
and I remember doing that. I go back to that formal and informal language. And
Sure.
I said, we're talking informal language the majority of time and what that sounds like and what that is. And once I really gave them that guideline, I tell you, they were so happy to know that. I mean, they were only taught like, this is how, you write it, this is how we say
Mm-hmm.
it. And it
Sure.
was a very step-by-step process. And it's like, actually, you got to sound a little bit more organic, I suppose, by saying it
Yes.
this way. And once I told them little tricks and different ways of recognizing it, and I said, that's when you'll be sounding a little bit, yeah, it's not as I guess not formal, but not to put that pressure again and
Mm-hmm.
sounding perfect. I go, once you kind of realize it's okay, the informality of the English is very very, it's very key, obviously, in us making the connections with people and being whether, and I've given them also lots of little tricks of what is British English,
Mm-hmm.
American/Canadian, and Australian and Kiwi, language. I said, oh, it's a little bit different, but no matter what, we all understand each other, and they really appreciate that too. So,
Awesome. Yeah, just
yeah.
to sort of wrap things up, can you share with us, a positive impact and a transformation you've made in your years of being an ESL teacher on a student that you work
Um, yeah, I guess, and I'll just go with most recently I've had a young lady who is Chinese, and she came to
with?
New Zealand, and she was going through a bit of personal issues and problems with, her marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
and she had her master's degree in education, and she's trying to start this business. Well, and she spoke fluently, and she wanted
Mm-hmm.
to come to me one-on-one, and I'm like, oh, well, you really speak, really well. Well,
Very
then
good
that's
English,
when
yeah.
I realized it isn't just about the language. It isn't
Sure.
just about, she had perfect grammar as far as I was concerned. She had her
Mm-hmm.
master's degree, but she couldn't quite get through the university here in New Zealand, and she wanted to start this business. And when she wrote me this email to say, to thank me, because she had to go back now since, and she's going to go for her PhD, I think, in China
Okay.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I want you to know, Christina, that you're not just a teacher. You were more than that. It was more of actually just listening and giving me, some advice and suggestions of what to say and how to say it for, these thoughts. She just needed someone to bounce ideas off,
Mm-hmm.
and someone that knew a lot about, I guess, the school system here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not just about grammar, and it's not just about, listening skills and comprehension skills. Well, actually, it is about learning the person's situation. Every
Absolutely.
learner is on their own journey, and it's
Mm-hmm.
so important. And I think that's what I do. That's why I've done doing what I'm doing, because unlike a big classroom situation and people in and people out and the business of it, I'm like, oh, I really want to take it individually, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
has a story, everyone has a journey. A lot of, whether they're refugee, immigrant, expat, they all have a story, and they all need a different, positive to feel, make themselves feel really good
Yes.
about where
Mm-hmm.
their situation is, because ultimately we're all, it's not easy being, an expat or an immigrant in a new country and making a new home here and making a
Mm-hmm.
new life. So yeah, it's very individualized for sure.
Yeah, it is never one size fits all. You really have to alter, personalize the experience for them. And I think also I'm very much like you. I like a quality and depth in connections with clients. So that's very important for me. And that's really why I really don't focus very much on group coaching. I
Yes,
do one-on-one, and because I really believe in not doing this one size fits all approach.
right.
Christina, just another question I just thought of before we wrap up. Now, you did mention in the very beginning that you integrate, or you've learned aspects of neuroscience,
Yeah.
and so how does neuroscience impact language and communication, and how do you implement those practices when you are working?
Yeah, well, I mean, just at a basic level, I suppose it's with the neuroscience, it has to do with, a lot of our mindset. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
it just goes back to that, even like, oh, if they have that growth mindset, that just like everything is, every little step matters. It doesn't matter if
Mm-hmm.
it's good, consistency is,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing, and that about, and the ways we, like, I guess, talk to ourselves and give
Sure.
ourselves credit to be like, you know what, every little thing I'm doing is I'm okay. It's not negative self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then wiring the brain with the learning, as far as some of those ideas that I was trying, what I just sort of said about. And I think and it has a lot to do with our belief systems. It has a lot
Sure.
to do with our goals and our goal planning, and a lot of them I do bring into their goals, whether, and it's very about their, if I go back to just the basics of English learning,
Mm-hmm.
not so much about, again, grammar. It's more about, like, oh, I'm going to read this one chapter in this book today or this
Mm-hmm.
week. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
watch one movie for a half hour this week. And I
Mm-hmm.
break down the little goals and I have them write it out. It's
Mm-hmm.
because once they understand that, oh, really, does that matter? Absolutely, it matters. Let's try. I want you to go this weekend to an Italian or a Mexican restaurant. So you're
Sure.
forced to order from the menu in English. Or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's kind of the idea,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, with goal setting, belief systems,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just making those like things that seem a little bit overwhelming and
Mm-hmm.
impossible
Mm-hmm.
to possible, and not
Sure.
for them to procrastinate. That's the other
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, this has been amazing. Such a good chat we've had. Can you tell viewers and listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, so I mean, I do have, I'm more active on Facebook these days with my
Mm-hmm.
talk time tutoring, and then I also do a women's circle
Okay.
Facebook group. And that's where I do, actually, yeah, I've been doing a coffee group here in Auckland on the shore for the month. Yeah, like every other, twice a month, we do a coffee group
Mm-hmm.
conversational so they can meet and make friends and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So that's on Facebook. And then I have my website, Talk Time Tutoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, NZ.
And
Yeah.
awesome. So, and you're also on LinkedIn. So I'll add
And I
all
am
of
on
that.
LinkedIn, yes, as
Yeah, I
well.
will add
Yes.
all of that in the description box. And for anyone
Yeah.
watching and listening, make sure that you hit the subscribe button on this channel to stay updated for more videos like this and every others. And also leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. And as always,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time, attention,
Well,
and presence. I shall see you
thank
soon.
you too, Shweta. It was
Thank
very
you
nice.
so much,
It was
Christina.
great. Great to chat.